Howdy, I'm Lonnie Ray Williams. I'm the new chairman of the Independent American Party. First off, I'd like to say welcome. And second off, you're going to notice something a little bit different about our party right from the beginning. We don't look the same, we don't act the same, we don't talk the same, because we don't want to be the same. We're just everyday Americans who don't subscribe to the insanity of the left, the insanity of the right. We're parents, homesteaders, common everyday people who just want to raise our children and grandchildren in our own ways, cultures, religion, without the government interfering. We want the same rights that my ancestors had or fought for when they came across on the Mayflower and through the Revolutionary War. We want those same rights that every human being cries for and strives for. The right to live their own life in their own way is something that's fundamental to the human spirit. We in the Independent American Party don't like to really look at ourselves as a party because we're more of a family. We're more of a family of people who were called deplorables on one hand, too radical on the other. In my case, a constitutional terrorist, whatever the heck that was, just because I write about liberty and freedom and our founding fathers and history. Wherever we come from, we share a common theme. We don't feel like we've really ever belonged anywhere else. Now, we like to think of it as a common sense way of looking at things, but more and more, that common sense way of looking at things seems to be a little bit radical to many people in this country. We've been silent for a long time. We've done our duty. I served my country. I was an infantry soldier and then went on to serve in the federal government in various capacities. I still have that spirit of service, but I've turned that spirit of service towards my local community because I think that that's where I can do the most good. And I think most of us here in that party feel the same way. We know what's coming. We know the world that we live in, and our eyes are open to the corruption and despicable practices that happen on both sides of the main political parties. You know, there are certainly few, and I don't mean to generalize, but last year in my campaign for local state office, I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Republican Party and recognized that the people need a party. And so I found this party and this organization of people who are not afraid to stand alone, who are not afraid to stand up against tyranny and corruption. And they asked me to start organizing Washington State, and I started doing that, and they started looking at my campaign material and my publication, the pamphlet, and said, hey, you know, maybe this is a good direction to go in, and I greatly appreciate that. But it's not about me, and it's never going to be about me. It's always going to be about the message that I'm delivering. And that message, this is the same message that our founding fathers delivered. We have a freedom in this country to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be, the best versions of ourselves that God created us to be. Not only is it a freedom, it's an obligation. Most aren't even taught about the freedom, let alone the obligation anymore. Civics has been stripped from our classrooms for so long that now even our politicians don't know that their sacred duty, their most sacred duty, is to protect the unalienable rights of you and me. That's why we send them there. But here in Washington State alone, There's 4,000 bills every legislative session proposed to take away rights, tax people, tell them how they need to live. Now, legislative session here is 2 years, so that's 2,000 bills a year. 1,000 every 6 months. You can break it down any way you look at it, but that's what's being proposed upon the people just here in this state. The same problem exists across the nation in other legislatures. They seem to think that they know how best to fix things, but all they do is break it. One of the things that I was asked to do was to deliver a response to the State of the Union. And when I wrote these words down and I recorded it several times, and gee, how the heck am I supposed to give a State of the Union? I've never thought I'd be doing something like this. But that's the strange thing that happens when you decide to stand up for yourself, for your family, your community. You find yourself doing things that you never thought you'd do. And that's okay. That's what this party's about. I'm a disabled veteran. I have lots of limitations and challenges, but God's on my side, and He helps me work through that. The answer I give to myself is I'm going to do everything humanly possible to stand up for this country. I took an oath a long time ago to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I don't find myself absolved from that oath. I don't think I ever could find myself absolved from that oath. That being said, I'm gonna attempt to read this speech. It's not, well, I won't suppose what it is, and it isn't. I'll let you all figure that out and get over my anxiety and get on with it. So here's how a common everyday American, veteran, pig farmer, homesteader, man who lives out in the middle of the mountains trying to find his peace of sanity for his family, delivers a response to the State of the Union. I hope that you guys can find it within yourselves to stand up for yourselves. Give our party a look. We've got a long way to go. We've got a website to rebuild. We've got whole state parties to rebuild. But I'm up to the challenge because I know who's on my side. And if you're a God-fearing American who wants what our founding fathers gave us, then give us a look. Well, that's not to say you need to belong to any specific religion. Let me make that clear. We believe in the same God that our founding fathers believed in. And that's that great divine creator that none of us can define completely. None of us know completely how big, how vast, how glorious, how wonderful our Father in heaven is. But we all know, at least those of us who are in this fight for liberty and freedom, we all know that there's a force out there greater than ourselves. And however you come to that understanding is a deeply personal and spiritual trip that I encourage everyone to take. And don't let any government or any person tell you what that means, other than you and your Creator. That being said, by the way, I tend to talk too much for those of you who don't know me. Here's our State of the Union from the Independent American Party. My fellow Americans, our nation recently watched the most divisive and dishonest State of the Union addresses that our country has ever seen. The perpetual rounds of continuous applause sought to drown out the voices of independent Americans across the country. However, the thunderous voices of those of us in the middle is just getting started. Since 1998, the National Independent American Party has been a defender of the Constitution, our founding fathers' principles, and the liberty of the people. As independent Americans, we know that the corrupt Republican leadership is just as bad as the corrupt Democratic leadership. There are but a score or so patriots left in the fight at the national legislative level. And those are in the battle for their own survival with their own party. This battle's taken place across the nation in states and counties as the remaining true representatives are purged by the political machines. Independent Americans stand fiercely against the party first, people last mentality that's taken over the halls of government. As independent Americans, we know that our corrupt two-party system is of the party, for the party, and by the party. George Washington warned us in his farewell address about the dangers of political parties. His prophetic words, sadly, now describe our fallen nation. The Democrats and Republicans have both squandered the American dream for campaign donations and enrichment schemes. Not to be outdone by the gaggle of corruption, the Biden regime has done more destruction to our nation in 2 years than the Great Recession of 2008. We are on the precipice right now of another great collapse. His headlines read more like a crime novel, where a drug-fueled kingpin rages as his empire burns, fueled by his obsessions. The incompetence has pushed us over the precipice of the greatest financial earthquake of all time. And now we're just staring in the abyss below in suspended animation as we wait for the gravity of it all to sink in. Now, as independent Americans, we know that both main parties benefit from a broken voting system and that low voter turnout aids in their manipulation. Their bank accounts fatten at the expense of our children and grandchildren's future, all in the name of greed and power. As independent Americans, we are sick and tired of taxation without representation. Now, I've gone into this already, but in my state alone, there are 2,000 bills a year that are proposed in the state legislature. 2,000 attempts to steal the people's money and control how you live. 2,000 attempts to take away your freedom. From Washington State to Washington, D.C., legislators, governors, even county commissioners and mayors are doing all that they can to silence we the people while pretending to want to help. Our state and federal constitutions strictly define that all political power resides in the people, and there is no other power than that of the power of the people. Our government has usurped our inalienable rights with impunity and has weaponized the government against the people. We're going to resist this coup of our inalienable rights with every legal and peaceful remedy that we have. As John Paul Jones said, I have not yet begun to fight. As independent Americans, we recognize that the human family is divinely ordained with natural rights from conception. My ancestors came across the Atlantic on a boat, the Mayflower. They left a land of oppression. They were willing to risk their lives. Matter of fact, most people on that boat died. There's only a handful of women survived. I think everyone who can trace their genealogy back traces it back to 22 males, and I think it's 5 females. Why'd they do that? They did that for the right to raise their family in their own way, in their own culture, in their own religion, and to provide the written word in a language where people can read it for themselves. Another one of my ancestors, Dr. Joseph Warren, died in the Battle of Bunker Hill to secure those same liberties before the Declaration of Independence was even presented. This tradition of service and liberty continued in greater and lesser branches down to my grandfather, my father, myself, and even one of my daughters is now served. Last year, I took up the mantle again for my country. I campaigned on a platform of parents' rights and have pushed to ensure that parents are the primary stakeholders in their children's upbringing. I am fighting to ensure that parents are retaining their natural rights. Independent Americans reject all forms of racial, religious, cultural, intellectual, hereditary, or biological superiority, as we know that we are all one people, created from that same divine creator that our ancestors referenced when they signed that Declaration of Independence. We have those same said rights. Those same said rights are extended to all people, regardless of what color you are, what religion you are, what culture you are. God says we are all in His image, and that's good enough for me, and that's good enough for members of the Independent American Party. We reject all forms of superiority. We hold that no government or power on earth has the right to intercede between an individual and their personal relationship with their Creator. No power or people have a right to define or regulate what faith is and what it calls a person to do in their lifetime. We hold that truth is written on the hearts and minds of each soul, and it is the individual responsibility to seek out and find their earthly burden to grow closer to Him who created all. We reject all label lynching and defaming of all those who stand up for themselves and call on government to return to civil discourse and respect. Simple human dignity is all we ask. The Independent American Party has long championed the values and traditions of the American family, and as independent Americans, we will continue to be warriors of those same principles of government that must bind our public servants to preserve and protect our personal rights above their own partisan ambition. The corrupt umbrella of special interest has sought to enslave us for long enough, and we refuse to surrender our rights. We hold that our Bill of Rights is absolute, and that those who label this great republic of democracy lack the wisdom to preserve the unalienable rights integral to any who seek to become a public servant. As independent Americans, we hold that the voting for the lesser of two evils is still evil. We prefer to stand alone on the proper principles of government and stand up for liberty against the aristocratic supremacists who claim ownership over our souls. We proclaim that the state of our union is sick, and the founding principles of personal liberty are in grave danger. Those clapping and cheering for the feckless leader of the free world have propped up the regime and have done nothing but peddle fiction to puppet masters while enslaving the hearts and minds of the people. The piles in inflation continue to craft the best handouts for votes that fake money can buy. They were not the first, but they will certainly go down in history as the cabal that sold our heritage for status and power. Some will exclaim that the proverbial Rome is burning, while others use the phrase, "The emperor has no clothes." Either way, our eyes are open and we see the collapse that we're in. As independent Americans, we know that our Constitution hangs by a thread at the hands of corrupt politicians. The apathy in America is a direct result in stripping civics from the classrooms and replacing it with pedophiles grooming our children with socialist delusions and fantasies. Few great teachers remain that want to empower our children to become the best versions of themselves that they were created to be. But we applaud each and every one who do stand up for that. Instead, there are many who teach to dishonor their parents and reject centuries of tradition and common sense. We are committed to taking back the minds of America from the toxic influence of Marxists and neocon ideas that dominate our government. We are the party of common sense and principled governance. Our solutions are those same solutions that have saved humanity from itself over the ages and enshrined by our founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and our founding records. I could go on for hours with bluster and rants, but in our party we choose to pray, reflect, and take action to preserve our liberty. I invite you to join us. Take a stand against our current state of the union. Help us take on all those who are opposing our liberty and human rights. Boldly stand up for liberty and proclaim, "I'm an independent American." This is the Independent American Party. We're few, but we don't care. We'd rather be alone and stand on principles than just keep going for the same thing that's been going on for a while. That way, whenever we get where we're done in this world, we can at least say, look, I stood up for my principles. We're common everyday people. We can try and dress up and look pretty when we need to, but I'm a homesteader who has chores to do. I've got pigs to take care of, animals, and all the other things in life that feed my family. And I'd encourage you all to get into that as quickly as possible so you can feed your families. And I help people do that. Anyway, that's enough about me and our party. What about you? What are your dreams and aspirations? I'd like to hear them. Do you want those same founding values of liberty and freedom to be the captain of your own ship and determine your course, to be the best version of yourself? You want that for your children? Stand with us. We need you. And I can assure you, once you step foot into this battle to secure your rights, your family's liberties, and stand up for your community, you'll be blessed. Yeah, there'll be lots of challenges, but none of that really matters anymore. Standing up for what's right feels pretty dang good. And we'd like to have you by our sides. So God bless you. God bless all those who stand for liberty and freedom. And reach out, give us a call. We'd love to talk to you. God bless. Have a great day.